Welcome to Planet Report, the show that brings you news briefs from all over the world. I'm Nicole Biagioni. Planet Report has returned as a weekly show in which we will cover 5 headlines for the week. We will begin with the news from Europe.
In Europe, Belgium began easing most COVID restrictions Monday in the biggest move to relax measures since the pandemic began some 2 years ago. Gone are the coronavirus passports that allows entries into bars, restaurants, theaters, and cinemas, as well as capacity limits. Masks will no longer be mandatory except on public transport and in the healthcare sector. The government announced last week that the nation of 11 million will go from code orange, the toughest second for coronavirus measures, to code yellow as of Monday. Other European countries are also relaxing their pandemic measures as more and more governments design protocols to coexist with the coronavirus. For Planet Report, I am Aliana. Back to you.
Thank you, Aliana. Moving on to USA, Isel has some news from us from our own home state of Florida.
From Martin County, Florida, WPTV News reports that state and local officials in Martin County are searching for a large area of the Hungryland Wildlife Preserve after human remains were found Wednesday. In a post of Martin County Sheriff's Office Facebook page, investigators said that the remains were found near a gator-infested canal bank, about 3 miles inside the park. Detectives and officers with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission were at the scene Thursday. Sheriff William Snyder said a Florida Game and Freshwater Fish Commission biologist was working in the preserve Wednesday morning and spotted what they thought was an alligator with a human arm. Commission law enforcement was called to the scene and spent much of the day looking for the remains. By the evening, they found the arm and called the sheriff's office. Detectives on Thursday later found what appeared to be other human remains. In the last 24 hours, officials said that they found 2 body parts, including one that was spotted in the mouth of an alligator. Law enforcement is faced with the challenge of determining if the remains are from the same person, scouring a huge area for evidence. They said that there is a high likelihood that an animal activity moved or destroyed all the remains. The remains found so far were discovered 1.5 miles from each other. Because it doesn't appear the remains were at the preserve for a long period of time, the sheriff is hopeful that to pull fingerprints and make an identification quickly before waiting for a DNA test. The park is currently closed to the public. For Planet Report, I am Isel Rodriguez. Back to you.
Thank you, Isel. Now to the continent of the blessed rains, Kelly brings you a report on Africa.
These 6 people, including 2 children, died when an apartment block collapsed in Ivory Coast's commercial capital of Abidjan overnight, the fire brigade said on Monday. Prime Minister Patrick Achi visited the site and promised an investigation into the cause of the disaster, which came a week after several people were killed when another building collapsed in another part of Abidjan. A certain number of actors still do not respect minimum rules and continue to take actions that lead to this type of situation, as she said. Firefighters were called to 50-story buildings in Kokori neighborhood shortly after midnight. 6 bodies were recovered from the rubble and search operations continued late on Monday. 13 people were taken to the hospital, it said. The number of people in the building when it collapsed was not immediately clear. For Planet Report, I am Kelly Garcia. Back to you.
Thank you, Kelly. Let's hope that the survivors of this tragedy may recover. Moving on, we have one last story for you about China and Russia.
Russian banks are looking to China to issue their customers new bank cards that will be accepted overseas as a suspension of service deadline approaches for Russia-based customers of Mastercard and Visa, the world's largest credit card and digital payment processors. As some companies choose to follow NATO members and their allies in severing business links with Russia as a result of the war in Ukraine, Russian banks are being cut off by major international service providers and forced to turn to China, which is positioning itself as a neutral observer of the conflict in official statements, despite the behind-the-scenes cooperation with Russia. After Mastercard and Visa announced their suspension of service on March 5th, Russia's central bank-supported credit card provider Mir issued a statement asking customers to get its new payment card that partners with China's state-owned UnionPay for purchases and withdrawing cash while abroad. American Express also announced a withdrawal of its services on March 6. UnionPay will process transactions for Russian-issued cards, as China's ruling regime hasn't declared any sanctions against Russia, while speaking out against Western sanctions. For Planet Report, I am Giovanna Schiraldi. Back to you.
Thank you, Giovanna. That's our show. Thank you to the researchers and correspondents who found these great stories. If you are interested in learning about more info on these stories, check the links in the video description below to learn more. We'll see you next time with a new planner report.